Hello everyone and welcome to the Grand Multiliteracy event. Back in March, when I asked you what you wanted to learn about in this event, many parents told me they wanted to learn more about multilingualism and neurodiversity. So today we have our first interview and it's going to be on multilingualism and dyslexia. So I'm honored to have received Dr. Alessia Raineri to talk about dyslexia, what it is, the myth around it, and especially related to multilingual children. So it's the perfect session to lay the foundations. And during the live event, we're also going to be talking to other researchers. So there will be Dr. Annie Chang Ng, with whom we're going to be talking about dyslexia, but especially with the Chinese language. And we will also be talking about autism and multilingualism with Dr. Alexandra Perovic. Dr. Raineri is an expert in multilingualism and dyslexia. She has a decade of research experience in bilingual and multilingual acquisition and more than 15 years in teaching foreign languages to children and adults. During this interview, we talked about her children, so it might be useful to know that she has 3 children that her husband and her are raising with 4 languages, and we especially talk about her 12-year-old son who was the object of her longitudinal case study on multilingual acquisition and dyslexia. So without further ado, let's get to this interview. Hello, Alessia, and thank you very much for being with us today to talk about dyslexia. So back in March, when I shared about the Grand Multiliteracy event and asked people what they wanted to learn about, several parents told me that they were raising multilingual children who were dyslexic, and they wanted to learn more about dyslexia and multilingualism. So I'm very happy to have you with us today to clarify a bit what dyslexia is, maybe bust some myth as well, and what it means for multilingual children as well. So thank you very much, Alessia, for being with us today to talk about this important topic.
Thank you very much, Shito, to invite me to this event. I'm very happy to be here today.
No, thank you very much. And so I'm going to start with the first question. So we often associate dyslexia with a person who writes the letters maybe in the wrong way or the wrong order, or who puts quite a lot of effort in reading, but that's like the visible part of the iceberg. Can you explain to us what's below or what dyslexia is? So as a starting point.
Yeah, it's a good question because everybody sees dyslexia as a little bit this writing and reading problem, but it's really the tip of the iceberg, let's say, how you well introduced. And yeah, what we see visible is a learning difficulty. So this problem with the letters, with writing, with reading slow. But in fact, there is an underlying difficulty. And this difficulty is mostly cognitive. And for every dyslexic child is also different, because we don't have to think also dyslexia of something fixed. It's something really, really wide and difficult to explain still now. I mean, research is still continuing on dyslexia, and every child is different because every child has some cognitive weaknesses and some cognitive strength. So there are some main cognitive difficulties in a dyslexic child. And so what we don't see is these cognitive difficulties. There can be orthographic difficulties, or some weaknesses on phonological sensitivity, morphological sensitivity, on fluency. And also what we don't see actually is how the dyslexic person deals with information. So they have more difficult to organize it, or at least to follow like some orders that are like from 1, 2, 3, 4. So they have difficulties of memorizing, every step of kind of logic. So it's a more complex than what it seems. In fact, it's really cognitive, and then it ends up that we discover it probably during the school years when children start to read and write. But already you can detect some of these difficulties already before.
So what can we do as parents to see if our children are a child is dyslexic or not, because like what I mentioned before about like the letters that were in the wrong order or facing the wrong way, etc. That's also things that I've seen in my sons when they were learning to write, like writing the S, like in a mirror, for example, but they're not dyslexic. So what can we do as parents to determine if they are dyslexic or not, or if it's just part of the learning process?
Yeah, exactly. As you said, we all the children have difficulties in learning to write and read. So it's question of timing. A child that has dyslexia needs more time and more effort. So we can see like every child will have some difficulties in learning to write a new writing system and to read it. But a normal developing child would have an average time in learning. So we'll make these kind of mistakes like the other kids in general. But a dyslexic child needs a lot more time because it needs a lot of more effort. It needs to use more strategies, to develop strategies. So actually we see the difference after 1 year, 1.5 years, they start to learn to read and write. So it's not so evident in the beginning, because all the children would seem similar in the beginning.
And is there any particular like exercise or test that we can do, like first as parents, before we go and see a specialist maybe, or to, I guess some parents would not hesitate to go and see a specialist, but other parents might be more like cautious about, or in some countries it might be more difficult as well to see specialists. Is there anything we can do to test, like to see if our children have dyslexia?
Yes. Already, as I said, we can detect it a little bit during the preschool years. So children may have special difficulties that are also linked to the kind of cognitive weakness that they have. So as I said before, some children, they have more phonological troubles, and other children more morphological, other children more orthographic one. And maybe if I have time, I also explain you which are the differences. But the important thing is really to detect already when they are developing languages, even if it's spoken languages, if they have some kind of difficulty, and to detect why, which is the cognitive difficulties underlying this difficulty. For example, there can be, if in particular, if they have some phonological weakness, small children already have difficulties in repeating words, in finding the rhythm of the syllabs, with the rhythm, for example, when they cannot really memorize a rhythm already when they are small, they cannot really say a long word well, or maybe they mistake sounds very easily, or they make the same mistakes over and over again, not like for a short time, but for months or even years. So, and also it's also something about the memory. It's they have like they can have a weaker memory, so they have problems in memorizing words, in really. Yeah, you will see that these children, they have more difficulties in developing languages. So also one of the first sign to see that you can wonder if your child will later have dyslexia is to see that they're late talkers. Not all the late talkers children, they will be dyslexic anyway, but at least you start to realize and to pay more attention in how they develop language. After some of them, they just catch up, and they will develop language very, very well, and they don't have any problem in the school. But some of them, they keep having these difficulties, and then you see them through reading and writing.
Okay. And so part of it can be like just each child goes at their own pace, etc. Some it can be because of dyslexia. Can it be also something other disorders that instead of just dyslexia?
Yeah. First thing, in fact, when a child has some difficulties in school, what they do also, what speech therapists do, is to ask you to make a check of the hearing system, if they hear well,
Yeah,
they
that's true.
see well, because can be that they have a real problem in hearing the sounds or in seeing the blackboard or the letters in the text. So can be that's totally a physical problem, but otherwise can be another kind of a typical development like ADHD, the problem of attention, paying attention on a task for a long time. That can give a child big difficulties, and he can maybe have problems then in reading and writing just for that, or other problems like dysgraphia, or other. I'm not a specialist in all the learning difficulties, but dyslexia is the most common one. We can say that dyslexia is really the most common disorder in learning that a child can have. In fact, today, for example, in France, they say that one child every 5 is dyslexic.
Yeah. Okay. And so because it's for parents who are raising multilingual children, I guess there is one thing we need to clarify quite quickly is so many parents or teachers wonder if speaking different languages can lead to dyslexia or can accentuate dyslexia. What do you want to say about this?
I think because it's really the topic of my research, that is pretty weird still that the people think that is one cause the other. It's just two different things. If a person is dyslexic, it will be dyslexic either if he's growing up with 2 languages or with 1 or with 4. It's just another kind of mind. Is wired in another way. And there is no multilingualism causing or worsening the difficulties of dyslexia. On the other side, they start to find out that children that are bilingual dyslexic, they actually outperform better than monolingual children being dyslexic in writing and reading skills. So in a way, we start to see even that can be an advantage to be bilingual for dyslexic children later on.
Okay. So does it mean that because they speak 2 languages, I guess there are lots of questions, but first, is it like if they speak 2 very different languages, it can harm them more because maybe they know different writing systems, or is it easier for them to like cope with dyslexia if they have 2 similar languages?
Mm-hmm. So languages for a dyslexic child, but also for a not dyslexic child, are not enemies, are friends. They work together. So for a dyslexic child, what is interesting is that this thing called multilingual awareness, language awareness, that only bilingual children have because they develop like this comparison of languages, even if they are similar or not similar. But he is developing like a real deep understanding of differences in, for example, if they write into system in sounds, in maybe writing system also. So a child that has this background, it's a little bit more prepared and stronger. It gets stronger after the dynamic between the languages. If they are different or different, that can be always different. It can be like if a child, like your children, they are learning different writing systems, and can be helpful, and can be also easier from some dyslexic child to learn a language that is made from alphabetic system, or maybe they have more difficulties in the alphabetic system than in a logographic language like Chinese, because it's more graphic, it's more orthographic. So if they have a stronger orthographic skill, they will be better in learning Chinese. But, you know, and all the way around, if they have a difficulty really in the orthographic, then it's more difficult to learn Chinese than maybe an alphabetic writing system.
Yeah.
So languages can be, depends, in fact, on the language script, but also on the language, like you said, can be, there are European languages like alphabetic writing system that are they are written with the same letters, with the same system, but they are more or less transparent.
Yeah.
So, for example, for me, Italian, I know for sure that is more transparent than French. So
Yeah.
my child that is dyslexic and he started to learn to write in French, I knew that it was more difficult than to write and read Italian. And actually, I always thought in my life that it's better to start with the difficult things and then everything will be easier. But for a dyslexic child, is the other way around. If they start to have a language that is more easy to write, like Italian or
Italian, for
Spanish,
example.
yes, they have they develop better this phonological awareness because they see that the sounds can be written in the same way, and so they develop a stronger phonological
I see, yeah.
ability, and that can help then later on with French or with English that they are less transparent.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of dynamics between languages, and every child has this unique variety, but it's for sure it's always helpful to have more languages.
Yeah.
To be growing up with more languages, even for a dyslexic child.
Okay. And so you just said that one language, so a more transparent language can help like maybe learn or remember how to write a more opaque language. Are there other there are some dyslexic people who are not multilingual and they develop some coping mechanism. Is there anything that maybe you have helped your son develop so that he can remember the spelling of French more easily?
The things that he developed maybe in Italian that could help him in French. For sure, something not really related to language that he developed is the relativity, because he understood that if he was born in Italy, he would follow the Italian system, he would have less issues. So I always explain to him, you see, if you read Italian, it's quite easy for you. It's easier than French. So you are making a lot more effort in French. So
Yeah.
it helps him to relativize, to see, okay, I was born here and this is more challenging, but that's it. You know, if I was born in another place, it would be less challenging. So he also doesn't leave it with a lot of frustration because he sees like something relative depending on the culture and the place where you are.
Yeah. I guess we can talk maybe a bit more about your son because I understand you did longitudinal research with your son who was growing up multilingual and dyslexic. First, can you tell us a bit more about your research, what you've done?
Yes, my research, as you well said, was a simple, let's say, simple longitudinal study of one child. The good thing is that I could really analyze a lot of different things of just one unique child. Also because he's my son, I could really see him constantly, making videos, using some standardized tests for analyzing his different languages, the development of different languages at the same time. And then there was a huge part was the analysis of the transcription of the standardized test. Everything is about vocabulary growing, syntax development, how to compare all the languages to each, monolingual norm, which you do, but is not so fair to do as well because it's a trilingual active child that was exposed to 5 languages in the first 4 years of life. So it's not obviously comparable to a monolingual child. But we use these tools to see if in fact he is really under the average, if he has some big problems developing, like let's say the most dominant language, then you need help. You need kind of helping him to develop much better one language. But in my case, I analyzed the situation even though it was complex, even though my child was and ended up to be dyslexic. The good thing was in my research that we found out that around 3 years old, 3 and a half, he was developing languages quite well, let's say, in the big, it was comparable to the big average of the monolingual norms on the bottom, low bottom, if you want, but still on the average, so not in a risk situation. And so that was super positive, because in a super challenging situation on multilingualism was still being on the multilingual norm. So
when you say, for example, monolingual norm, does it mean in terms of like number of words he knew across his 3 languages, or just with one language?
We try to analyze every language who was active for him. So Dutch, Italian, and French. Okay, and every language has monolingual norms separately. So for Italian, there is a monolingual norm. For French, of course, they are similar, but they are based on studies and research made just for monolingual children with that language.
Yeah. That's really positive then, because you have 3 languages. In each of his languages, he managed to be like in the norm of a monolingual child in terms of.
Wait. A multilingual child, you have always to analyze all the languages, but especially if you need to compare to the norm, you should compare the most developed one, the dominant language.
Okay, yeah.
Case, let's say at 3.5 years old, Italian and Dutch were quite similar, were active and almost both on the similar level, but Italian was the most dominant language. So luckily for me as well, to study his Italian was easier for me. I understood and I checked with the norms of Italian for monolingual children, and he was touching, even if he was touching the bottom of the average, he was still on the norm of monolingual children, which is completely super good news, because already a multilingual child has vocabulary in one of the language a little lower normally than monolingual children. You have to analyze the full vocabulary in all the languages to compare it to a monolingual child. But analyzing vocabulary in Italian and syntactic and grammar in Italian, it was actually arriving to also complete acquisition of Italian, which was more or less age appropriate. So let's say at 3.5, he was speaking more or less like children, monolingual children in Italy, Italian monolingual children with the same age, age. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's difficult to make these comparisons for a monolingual child, because it's always, you are comparing a little bit always apple with pears. So it's not always easy. But also my comparison was with multilingual children from other studies, trilingual actually, to see if they were, for example, another tool we use in research is the mean length utterance. That means the average of the sentence of the child in that period normally is growing with the time. Normally is growing with the time, because a child starts with 2-word sentences, then 3, then 4, etc. And I started to analyze it, comparing his mean length utterance with other trilingual children, because multilingual children have a shorter mean length utterance than monolingual children.
At the same age,
But also in general, because a multilingual child also develop a kind of way to communicate that's more concise, more compact, more direct, and they don't use a lot of long sentences. Which is also, you have to see it also as a smart thing to do, because they are trained to communicate in different languages, and also to think in a way to be clear when they express a message. And this is an advantage, is a very beautiful thing. But if you compare it in the study, it seems like they are weaker than a monolingual child, because a monolingual child makes long, complex sentences. But in fact, it's a good skill. It's a skill that
it depends from which perspective we see it.
Exactly.
So now your son is, I think, 12 years old.
Yes.
And what's so generally we think or we have the impression that dyslexic children don't like to read because it takes a lot of effort. I understand that your son does like to read. How is his rapport to no?
More or less, let's say. It was a difficult, was very challenging for him to start to read and to appreciate reading. Uh, we can start from the beginning. Now he's 12 years old. He likes to read certain books, normally comics,
Yeah,
certain comics that he likes. But he has been raised in a family culture, let's say, where we try to read every night to him, read loud stories. At one point, I started to read with him, like reading loud, but with the book in front of him, showing the words. Always
yeah,
books that they were interesting for him. So trying to see what he likes most, and of course, the first thing is to have fun with reading. It's not really reading something boring for you. And then later on, to support him when he wants to buy a book. I never say no to a book. I say you cannot
yeah,
buy everything. Maybe I say no, we cannot buy like everything. But if
yeah,
you ask me a book, I go to buy it immediately. And also his father. So that was very good. We supported that. And then slowly he started to read a little bit faster. At the beginning, we were trying to say, now it's time to read. Maybe, if you play some video games half an hour, then you have to read half an hour, a little bit of tricks.
yeah. Some incentive.
Yeah, I suppose the beginning was not like enjoyment for him. But as soon as he started to develop, the reading skills a little bit better, then I start to enjoy more reading. But
Yeah.
he's still not a child that will pick up a book because he's bored. It's very strange. He does that sometimes, but it's not like something really, really common.
Could you share maybe a few more things you've done with your son to encourage him to read? Because I guess, like you're saying, it's the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Even if it's harder for dyslexic child to read, they can get to a point where they enjoy reading. So, what are the other things you did? So, for example, you said you read with him almost every night. If he says he wants a book, you always say yes. Are there other small tips you want to share with parents?
Yes. Well, also, I think also it's important to build vocabulary. So it's not always the goal of he has to read faster.
Mm.
He has to enjoy also the stories, the things. So audiobooks, why not?
Ah,
Sometimes
yeah,
it's good also to hear it. Maybe I was telling him try to follow when you hear on the book. So maybe it's also an exercise for you.
yeah,
Or yeah, listen. I really support, encourage like hearing because for a dyslexic child, hearing is easier. For
yeah,
everybody, it's easier. But finally, we learn to read and write to acquire knowledge, to know the world, to know some topics better, to develop knowledge. So let's not forget the goal. It's not just acquiring. It's what they call, in fact, go through strategies and go around strategies. So there are certain strategies that you use with a dyslexic child that is, you try to go through the problem, through the disorder, the issues, the skill that is weaker than the others. For example, I try to be, because there is a big problem of frustration with the dyslexic
I
children. They
guess, yeah,
feel less than the others, they feel more stupid, they feel like less good in the school, so they compare themselves to others.
yeah,
What you can do actually to support a dyslexic child is to make him compare with himself, not with the others. So, for example, reading a page one evening and say, let's chronometer the seconds you need to read it. Maybe the first day we'll read it in 58 seconds, and then the second day in 55. And then in 1 week, he's reading it in 38 seconds. So to make him understand that he's challenging himself and is competitive with himself and is starting to read better and better. This is much more important than to compare himself to others, because he has to understand that he is training and he can reach certain goals. So, and you lose also the focus on frustration, because if you compare yourself with others when you don't have this particular skill like the other, yeah, it doesn't make sense. It makes you just.
And also, I guess we tend to compare ourselves when we feel that we're worse than others at certain skills. So maybe a dyslexic child will make more effort to read, but maybe they're good at drawing or football or whatever. So they can. So maybe we can say you compare yourself when it's bad, but also know that you're good at other things as well.
That is the go around strategy. So I just spoke about go through strategy. That is an exercise to improve your skills, even though it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's a lot more. The dyslexic child make 4 times more effort to read something than another child. So it also can give an headache. My child, when he was the beginning of elementary school, the first couple of years, he came back with headache from the school, because it takes a lot more exercise, more efforts, and in the evening they can be super tired. And you think maybe they're lazy, but they're not lazy. They're just super tired. They had doing a marathon when another one made a short run. So it's exhausting. And so also to develop this empathy with a child that has dyslexia, to know, it's not just laziness or stupidity. It's nothing to do with being intelligent or not. It's really because they have weaker skills, cognitive skills in certain things. But another strategy, like you just mentioned, is the go around strategy. Is, you are dyslexic. It's right. You have an issue. You have a disorder, but I'm sure you have a talent for something else. The world is not going around reading and writing. If there is also, you can make sport. Maybe you're good at sport. Maybe you're good in learning an instrument. Maybe you're good at drawing, or maybe you're good at talking and making speeches with your friends. I don't know. But there are a lot of things that also to recognize and to help a dyslexic child with. Because if you recognize he has certain powers, superpowers, let's say, he can see dyslexia like, okay, it's my weakness, but it's not like all my life. Like something I have to deal with and to progress with. But if I develop other skills and they embed in other skills, also that helps with self-esteem. Because the big problem also in the school is frustration. It's people, the dyslexic children are frustrated. They don't enjoy school. They don't enjoy reading and writing. And they are going more and more far away from that because it's just frustration. And the good thing of my son, for example, is I just recently spoke with his special need teacher, and she said that is different from the majority of dyslexic children, because he's not really frustrated. He goes on. He enjoys school since last year. He really enjoyed to go to school, finally. And for the first time this year, he decided himself not to get all the help from the school, the accommodation that they normally do in France, like in England, for sure. And he decided now to try out the first month of the school until Christmas without any help.
Okay.
So, and, I agree with that, because you try, and then we speak about it in Christmas. We see what is really working, what is not, and we go back maybe with some helps. But it's good also to go a bit out from the comfort zone, to try something new and to see if it's working. But you need to be not frustrated and to have a high self-esteem because most of the children, they are just frustrated and they will never think about it. So it's important, I think, to work on the self-esteem.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to talk about is something you mentioned a bit earlier about the fact that when you're multilingual, and so you speak and you can read in different languages, one language can help the other language. So it's positive, but that makes me wonder if there are more dyslexic children in certain languages than others. Do you know anything about that?
Well, there are, in general, average, it's more or less the same. Actually, where is recognized, where is studied, I think it's also a problem with the statistics in general. Okay,
Yeah.
there is awareness of dyslexia, they study it, and then there is a certain percentage, like normally one child every six is dyslexic today. But it's true that depends also of the culture, the language environment, the language script. And like I said before, if there is a presence of a cognitive phonological sensitivity, but you live in China, you need to read and write in Chinese.
Mm.
It's not such a big problem if you have this phonological weakness because it's not very
Yeah.
phonological in China. So it depends of the script. It depends also of the distance between the writing system and the spoken language. Because let's see also in Switzerland, German part of Switzerland, I was living there before, and the people speak one language, which is Swiss German, and in the school they learn Hochdeutsch, the German,
Yeah.
standard German, and this is quite different. So how can you really? It's difficult for children to learn to write in standard German when they're hearing always a different language at
Yeah.
home, outside with other children. And this is the main problem. Dyslexic children, for sure, they have more, it's more challenging for them because, you know, this thing of sound and written word is more complex for them because if you have this distance between written system and spoken system, it's much
Yeah.
more difficult to get it.
Yeah.
So this is an example, but it's also, there are other writing systems like Arabic. I don't know, especially that I'm not able to write in Arabic, but I know that they don't write vowels. That
Yeah.
is linear, but it's difficult. There is no separation of words. So also that we have phonological difficulties when we read with alphabetic language system, but we have, like, we know that we read from left to right. We have space between words. We have some simplicity in the writing that help us reading. But there are more other scripts, other language scripts that are more complex in that. So it
Yeah.
depends.
So each
Actually,
language, each writing system or each script has its own difficulties.
yeah. And after it depends also of the school. If the school is there ready to recognize it, to help you go through
Mm.
dyslexia, to help you with accommodation, they are trained for that. Of course, the child will have less difficulties to cope with that, to find strategies.
Okay. And I was also thinking, so let's say a bilingual child who speaks French and English,
Mhm.
which are two opaque languages, so it might be difficult for this dyslexic child. Could it be beneficial if later on they have the opportunity to learn a language, to learn, for example, Spanish or Italian?
It can be beneficial. Yes, of course. I don't know if I understand well your language. If it's beneficial for a dyslexic child.
Yeah. Or it could be, I guess, even a monolingual child, if it would be beneficial for them to learn another language, because you talked
Ah,
before that some language can help others when you're dyslexic.
mhm, mhm. Well, another thing that is quite supported from research is that first we have to think that learning a language is especially learning a spoken language. So if he's a dyslexic child, let's concentrate on spoken language.
Mm.
Don't lose everything on written language because it's in fact the language is mostly what we say, what we evolve with the language when we speak. Language is societies, communities speaking together. So when in the school, all is concentrated on grammar, on writing skills, reading skills.
Yeah.
I'm sure it makes it super difficult and super demotivating for a child. And I don't say only for dyslexic children, even for, like me, normal children. I was a child time ago, and I had a problem with English, for example, during the high school. I didn't like it because the teacher was not a good teacher, because she was always talking in Italian and she was writing down this exercise was not something fun. I understood it later on when I went to the university and I went to live abroad for 1 year, that, oh my God, but in fact, it's fun to learn a language. I want to learn English. I can communicate, and it's fun to discover new words, to read the grammar. And it's completely different when you make something fun and something alive. So first thing I say, when you think about dyslexic or not dyslexic child to learn a new language, is to think about the use of the language, about the spoken language. It should be, not the other way around, that you focus on the written language and then maybe day later on you will talk. No, it's not like that. You need to talk. And written is a part of the thing of learning a language, because it can help you to read, to acquire more vocabulary, to communicate in other way. But I think it's very important. There needs to be a switch, also in the school system, because fun is very important, and not only for children, but also for grown-up, because all the people like to learn with fun.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I was wondering, we covered quite a lot from your research to you as a mom and raising a multilingual child with dyslexia. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to share regarding dyslexia and multilingualism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are many things we couldn't cover, unluckily. For example, about fun, I would suggest to make games, board games. There are many available board games for playing with a written language. And now there are more and more apps, like video games made for dyslexic children. And which are very interesting. There is one is called Grapholearn. I never use it because it's about English. I don't know if it's translated in different languages. And another one in France is Poppins. And they are apps, they're different apps, but the goal is really to learn through game.
Yeah.
And I see it like I study in particularly Poppins because it's well developed in France, and it comes from studies from a really long and research between universities. So it's really an interesting tool, and they use music to learn how to write and how to divide the word in syllabs. And they say it helps a lot. In 1 year of using that app, it helps children, dyslexic children, to read faster. And I see my child using it. He likes it. It's not, you use it 20 minutes a day, 15, 20 minutes a day, and then it stops. It's not this kind of video games that you are always on it, which I'm not really for that. It's just a video game you use, and then it stops when it's finished the lesson. And it's fun because I see that he uses it and he likes it. And it's made in a way that is fun and is helping reading and writing. So I really strongly suggest to use this kind of tools that maybe you have to use it at home. Or
if you give me the links, I can put them in the description of the video. That would be great.
Yes, of course. It's important. And then another thing I can say, because here I cannot cover everything about dyslexia and multilingualism, is that I'm planning to make maybe a self-paced course for multilingual parents and children that have dyslexia, learning disorders, and I'm gonna make it in the following months. So if you want to follow me and know more about it, and know also what you can do at home, to have some practice examples, what you can do with your child even when he's small, to help him develop certain skills.
I'll leave your contacts anyway under the in the description of the video. They're also in the program of the event. So if people want to get in touch with you or want to follow you to know about when this course comes out, etc., I leave everything.
Yeah, I'm very happy for that. Thank you, Yoshito, to help.
Okay. Thank you very much for all your time today. I guess, yeah, thank you very much.
And I want to finish reading this sentence that I don't know if you
yeah.
is dyslexia is not a problem. It's the way you perceive it that can be problematic. So I think it's very important to understand if your child is dyslexic, if you have a doubt that is dyslexic, go and check it with a speech therapist trained in multilingualism or with a multilingual expert and the speech therapist together. And, you know, and once you recognize it, don't think it's a problem. It's actually something that if you pass through that, like everything hard in life that makes people stronger, it's also dyslexia. So it can make you stronger in reading and writing, but especially stronger for other skills, for self-esteem, for other things in life. So use it not as an enemy, but as a partner to collaborate with, to deal with, and to develop skills.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. If you would like to learn more about neurodiversity and multilingualism, I invite you to attend the live interviews with Dr. Annie Chang Ng and Dr. Alexandra Perovic. And if you're interested in multilingual literacy, I invite you to also attend the rest of the events. You have all the details in the program that's linked in the description below.